You're listening to She's the Business podcast. If you've been in the online business space for any amount of time, then it's highly likely you've come across some content talking about the fear of failure and why we need to get over this fear of failure in order to find success, why we should be playing to win instead of playing not to lose. But have you ever considered that you may have a fear of success? And maybe it's a fear of success, not a fear of failure. That's actually the one thing that's stopping you from taking the action that you need. Maybe the fear of success is how you're holding yourself back from actually getting the success that we're out there to get. Now, this may sound crazy, but this is a very, very real thing. And we're just as likely to have a fear of success as we are to have a fear of failure. So today's episode, we're diving right into this topic. You're going to find out how to identify whether you have a fear of success and what you can do about it. So stay tuned. Hi, I'm your host, Jessica Osborne, and in my 23 years of business and marketing, I've built many brands to become multi-billion-dollar companies. And just in the last 10 years, I've built 2 online businesses of my own from my dining room table with 2 little babies running around at my feet. I've made it my mission to inspire you to get out of your own way and become the successful business owner who's living the lifestyle you really desire without all the hustle. This is She's the Business podcast, made by women for women. This is your weekly dose of motivation and inspiration. Now, I'm very excited to welcome to the podcast today my special guest, Kelley Thompson. Now, Kim is the founder of Kelley Productions, an events management company, and also she's a business coach and a personal development coach, works with entrepreneurs, particularly at that startup phase where we're often the one biggest thing standing in our own way. She provides entrepreneurs with strategies and support to turn those business dreams into reality. Now, Kim's also a mum of 4. She's a speaker, an author, the host of the Successful Startup Virtual Summits, and the soon-to-be released Successful Startup podcast. Now, Kim knows a lot about what it means to have a fear of failure and also a fear of success. She's a multi-passionate entrepreneur. She's started and grown 4 businesses herself. So she really knows what she's talking about when it comes to the things that can be standing in our own way, because she's done all of this while also raising her 4 children and a host of other things as well. So without further ado, let me play this interview for you. Okay, and here I am with Kim Thompson. Kim, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to talk to you about your experiences in business and get into this really interesting topic on fearing success, because wow, I think most people fear failure and fearing success. Yeah, like what an interesting topic to dive into and to really get some awareness on if that's something that is holding us back. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I'm really glad to be here. And yeah, I think it's a topic that oftentimes we hear, oh yeah, I'm just, I don't want to fail. I don't want to put myself out there and such. And people get afraid of that because it seems to be the most common thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the success, it's just the other side of the coin. And truthfully, it's almost like you can be both. Right? You can be afraid of both, about being really successful or just completely failing and falling on your face. And one is mostly an internal thing. That fear of success is your own thing. The fear of failure is really because you're looking at what are other people going to think and what other people are going to say. And that's usually more of an outside thing rather than the inside. Makes sense?
Fascinating. Yeah. And let's dive into that. But before we do, would you like to give everybody a quick 1 minute or 2 minute, whatever feels right to you, intro into who you are and what you do in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Kim Thompson, as you said, and I am a business owner and a business coach. I've built a couple of different businesses over the years, and that led me actually into starting to work with other people, particularly women that are in the service service-based industry. I started my online venture. I started years ago with a personal development business. I was in sales and excelled in it. And I became a sales trainer for a lot of my clients. They saw that I was doing well and asked me to start training their teams. And that led me to actually buy a franchise in the personal development arena, because personal development and business development go, you know this, they go hand in hand. They just absolutely do. And so I did that for quite a while. And later on, flash forward years later, after raising a family, wanted to get into the online space and started with an online publication, very specific to the meeting planning industry, and even much more specific than that, which we can probably even touch on as we get further into building a business and such. The niche was really in corporate incentive. And that's important. And you know this in your business, how important it is to be that specific with something, because that opened the door to literally 3 different revenue streams and allowed me to create a 6-figure business incredibly quickly. But it was because I was so specific on what I was doing. And so from there, because I had done that, and I learned obviously quite a bit in doing that, and I had been that part of that, actually, I let a couple of things go because they were no longer serving the purpose of what I wanted. But I still have my production company. I do event productions for very high level red carpet or media events. So that is still going. And then I also have a content development business that's still operating. So that has allowed me then to start giving back and working with others. So I started working with a lot of women that were, and not just women, I have a lot of younger entrepreneurs too, that are trying to understand, how do I actually take my idea and bring it to reality? And what does it really take to do that? And part of that is kind of getting out of your own way, and that fear of success, fear of failure.
Yeah, amazing. So there's so much in there, but let's start with, what's the difference between the fear of success and the fear of failure? And how would we sort of create some awareness around what it is if we're currently feeling like we're held back and, not taking action? And we've likely got one of those fears going on. So how do we know which is which?
I think, quite frankly, that they can be interchangeable, but I do think that fear of success is actually more common than we probably think it is. I think a lot of times people are more apt to say fear of failure, but again, I think that's more an outward thing rather than inward, because fear of failure is usually, well, what do you care if you fail? Because you're not going to make the money to support your family or something. Okay, that's one thing, I can understand that. But a lot of times people hold themselves back because they're worried about what other people are going to say, and they're listening to other voices out there. The success part of it comes in when you sit back and you say, well, wait a minute, if you start to really look at what you're doing, you can start to see patterns that would tell you, okay, what's really going on here? And because if I say I want one thing and I'm sitting over here, what's preventing me from going there? And it's not really the failure usually, because we oftentimes know, we've had plenty of past experiences that we can look at and say, okay, well, that wasn't so bad, I got through it, or this, was okay, I got through that. So it's usually the pain of that failure is not that great. It is the pain of the unknown. That is the thing, that success, that kind of holds us back, because we have this programming it's inside that is kind of running the show. And if you can start to become aware of maybe what your patterns are, for example, avoidance. Do you find yourself saying, oh God, I have to get that done, but I'm so busy. I'm so busy. And you're always so busy, but what are you so busy with? And if you're always so busy, then you have to look at that and say, okay, why do I keep pushing this off? And are you into people pleasing? In other words, do you not have any firm boundaries? Because it can be very subtle. And you could say, okay, if I don't have good boundaries, why is that? Or am I always looking to take on things and people please by saying, I'll do this, I'll raise my hand for that. Well, are you looking for validation then outside of yourself? Are you looking for acceptance? Then you kind of take that back and you go, what really happened in my life, and where did I see this pattern develop? And did it serve my family or my friends or wherever you saw this in your life show up? You can look at it and go, well, did that really serve me? Or did it serve them? And is that really the story? Because when you can start to be aware and you write down what would, in a sense, be a common denominator, you will start to see a pattern. And you can look at that pattern and say, okay, does this look familiar? And if I experience this anywhere else in my life, and then you can start to say, oh, if I've experienced this in my life, what did it look like? And a lot of times what I've found with many of my clients is that they'll say, oh my gosh, I totally remember a time when we were doing really well in our family, but all of a sudden, it's like the family fell apart, or there was, divorce or something happened. So the now all of a sudden is doing really well is associated with a loss. And we usually see that. A lot of times people will say, I have to give up something else. And that's what tends to be the trade-off. And so that success becomes more of, oh my gosh, at what cost is it going to be? And then all of a sudden we start to hold ourselves back. So you have to start looking at what are some of the things that you're doing that are, so that you can be aware first, because awareness is key.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so interesting. Yes, because you can think, well, why would we fear success? Like, we're in the business, we want it to be successful. We all want success, right? That's why we're here, entrepreneurs, driven to a goal. But then, what is that thing that you're afraid of that might be like, well, but I don't want too many clients at once because then I wouldn't be able to cope with them all. Or I need to get this system in place first, because what if everybody says yes? And so maybe there's a lot of what you might look at as procrastinating, or stuff that might feel logical as well. Like, that does it present as logic at times?
I think oftentimes it presents it as logic. I mean, I think that's part of the issue, is that it presents itself as logic, and you can push it off and say, but I am busy, I have to do this. And are you procrastinating, or are you into perfectionism, right? But it comes back to our own selves. It comes back to how we view it, because if you're looking at it and you're saying, oh my gosh, I've got to get this done, or I've got to get that done, I really want the success of my business, but then we stop short. Then we have to say, well, why do I always seem to be hitting blocks? And that's the number one thing. You can sit back and say, gosh, because you feel it. I mean, the bottom line is you will absolutely feel it, because your intuition is always guiding you. And so you're going to feel it at some point in your body, and your intuition lives in your gut too. It lives in 3 different areas of the body, right? In your head, but it's the right side. So it's right thinking. And so if you can easily sit there and look around and go, okay, well, I've done this, I've done that, I have this vision over here, but you're at point A and you want to go to point B. And like you said, we want our businesses to thrive. We want to grow these businesses. But if we're kind of on this journey, and for some reason, and I think most people can relate to this, we seem to keep taking these detours. Like, how often is it's like, we know that growth's never linear. I mean, you can look at anything in this universe. You could fly a drone up above and you would see that rivers are winding, mountain ranges are winding, right? So there's always a path and it's growing, and you have to do that. But when we start to keep jumping on and off the train, so to speak, we take all these detours by saying, oh my gosh, how come it's working for them and it's not working for me? Wow, why is it taking so long for me? Or maybe I just need to change the look of this landing page, or maybe I just need to adjust this, without really having good concrete information. Like, maybe there are some things you have to change, but sometimes we just jump ship too quickly, because usually it's because we're just like, if I can find another project to do, then I'm being productive and I'm being busy. But what you're doing is really perpetuating the problem. And the problem is that you have a block. And what the heck is that block? And you have to identify that block, because when you can remove that block, that's a game changer for you. But you can't remove it unless you're aware of it. So you have to look at, what are these patterns? What am I actually doing? Because you will find a common denominator. It's very easy. Like, one of my biggest things was I was doing, and this is one of the blocks of success, is trying to do everything yourself. Trying to just, because, oh my gosh, if I have to teach somebody else this, first of all, are they going to be able to do it like I can do it? Will they care as much as I care about this, because it's my business? Well, how many businesses in the world are booming? I mean, major corporations. Did the person that started do it did Amazon, Jeff Bezos started by himself? No, you have to rely on other individuals and trust that other individuals are going to have that same view and that same desire to grow that business like you are, depending on how you lead your team. And so that, again, all comes back to self. But if we aren't willing to delegate some of that and let go of some of the control, that success will slip through our hands because you can't hold on to something. When you hold on to it so tightly, it completely disappears. So you have to be willing to go, okay, wait, how can I best start to allow other people to shine and do what they are meant to do? And one of my very first mentors ever was a man named Zig Ziglar, who was a huge, just a genius in sales and a motivational speaker as well. But he always said, you can get anything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want. And it's the same thing that Marianne Williamson talks about this in Course in Miracles, is that when your light shines, right, you unconsciously allow other people's light to shine as well. And if you are trying to do it all yourself and control it yourself, you don't give anybody else the chance to expand. And that's the whole purpose of why we're even here. Like, our soul is here. Our soul's purpose is for expansion. It's for growth. And so as we start to step out and do that, we start to shed the old skin, those blocks, by taking little baby steps forward in many different ways. And part of that is relinquishing that control.
That's such a great point. And I love that analogy about the light, because it made me think, well, when you're really holding on to it all yourself, you're holding on to things where your light really isn't shining that brightly, like stuff that you're probably not that talented at doing, but you're holding on to all these things, and that's someone else's light you're holding. You're like, somebody else has the skills in that area. It's what they love. Yet you're here holding all of it and not letting your own light shine brightly in where you've got the most value to give, where your energy lies, and where your zone of genius, we'll call it, and you're holding someone else's and you're not giving them the opportunity to shine because you're doing that. That was really powerful to get that kind of visualization through what you said then. Thank you. Do you think
it's your zone of genius, though? It's stepping into your zone of genius.
Yeah.
And like you said, and allowing others, because we are so afraid, I think, sometimes of just kind of stepping out of that comfort zone. And then we get caught up in, again, the mundane tasks and stuff, which, listen, the internet, our world now, there's so many different things that we could do it all ourselves, but then we do, and then we just kind of sabotage ourselves and pull ourselves back because we aren't shining in what we're truly meant to do.
And I think it's like partly even just taking that step back and feeling like, even though I'm being told I can do all of these things and you can go and find instructions on how to do it all, should you really be doing it? Is that really what is that the best way to spend your day, your life, your week, is trying to do it all? Or actually be okay with, well, just going to let somebody else who that's their thing, I'm going to let them do that, which means that you can kind of step more into your power.
I think it's conditioning. I mean, it's like, we know that, and especially I think as women, I think it's easy to take on so many things because you do wear a lot of different hats. You're mom, you're trying to take care of everybody. You can be a nurse, right? Because, let me take care of that, or another bruise or another cut or whatever, right? You're wearing all these different hats that you're juggling as a business owner too. And so we're used to just saying, okay, no problem. I'll put myself over here until I take care of everybody else first. And then we I got this, I've got it. And you rob other people of being able to actually to be able to give to you. And there's a gift in that.
Yes.
I mean, everybody feels great when they're not just giving a gift, but obviously when they're receiving a gift rather, but also when you're giving a gift. It feels nice to be able to do that and have somebody want to accept it.
Yes. Yeah. That's amazing. And something else that was sort of coming up for me as you were talking just earlier about, really fearing success and how that's showing up, something that came to mind was somebody thinking, well, if I go and put myself out there on social media, or if I do this reel, what if thousands of people see it? What if I start a TikTok channel and thousands of people are now watching me? And that fear of, well, what are you making that mean? What do you think people are making that mean? Like, why? Because I see that probably in a lot of my circles, people actually worried about taking that action to put themselves out there, even though they want the business with the success, they want the clients to come in easily. And, everybody's like, yes, that'd be amazing if they just came to me and I didn't need to worry about it. I wasn't relying on referrals. Sounds incredible, but, I don't want to put myself out there because, what do you think they're making that mean? Like, is this part of the fear of success?
I think that's a big part of the fear of success. I really do. Because again, I think it's what we do is we get so caught up. It's an internal thing. We get caught up in our own head. about, oh my gosh, because we start to think it and then we overthink it. And then we think, oh, it's almost, I don't know if you've ever read that book, If You Give a Moose a Muffin, but it's almost like if you give him a muffin, then he'll want this, then he'll want a bath because he has to wash up before he has the milk. And it goes on and on and on, right? It's the same thing we do. We sit in our heads and we could have put it out there already, but instead we think, well, what if I do that? Well, what are they going to say? Well, will they think this? Will they, I'm going, are they going to think I'm too far off this way? Are they going to think this? Are they going to judge me? And it's like, the reality is, if you look at how you look at things, if people have the time to do that, then you probably don't want them in your circle anyway. They're going to be spending that time, right? And so I think you just have to get to a point where you say, who cares? Who cares? And you just kind of have to put one foot in front of the other and do it anyway, because what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to go to your grave not having ever done something. And if you look at that and you can really stand there from the perspective of like, oh my gosh, in 10 years, am I going to be happy that I actually took a chance and went for something? Or am I going to be happier that I didn't because I was so concerned about what other people think about me? And you really have to look at it from that perspective. And the reality is most people could care less and they aren't going to say anything. And even if they do, again, is it okay? So what? They're probably jealous. The reality is too, right there is that most often people look at that and they think, holy cow, they're doing it. Why am I not doing it? And so either secretly jealous or envious, probably a better word, that you're doing it and they're not. And then it's like, oh, okay, so that's not your issue though, but it's very easy to take that on, isn't it? To say, oh, and then you feel kind of wounded by somebody's comments, but.
Yeah, why do we always think that someone else's judgment is going to be negative? Why do we think that they're going to look at what we've done and be critical? You know, you think it's kind of crazy how our brains work. It's like this sort of monkey chatter that's going on in there, like, oh, I put that out. What if loads of people see it and nobody comments? Then people will judge me that I'm not getting any comments. And that means they're not liking my content and someone then won't think I'm very good at what I do. It's like, whoa, you know, we're just starting with putting a post out there. Who even says that thousands of people will see it in the first place? Maybe they will, great, but shouldn't that be a good thing? And then why would someone who's watching that think negatively about it? You know, we just get so in our own heads, and, you know, that chatter, that judgment that we're perceiving is actually our own judgment, isn't it? Like it's actually coming from inside our own heads, and we're projecting it out there and thinking that's what everyone else is going to think. Oh, why would they be thinking that? Like, have we any evidence at all? And even if they are thinking it, how will we even know that they are? I guess that's what I like to say. How will we know? Therefore, why should we even care? Because you're never going to know what someone's thinking in their head.
Exactly. We're trying to read everybody else's minds. And the reality is too, right there, is that isn't that in our own minds? Because if we have the thought, then it's really our issue. It's not anybody outside, because it all starts with us and it all starts with our own thoughts. So if we have that thought, then we have to look at ourselves. That's where you would stop and say, that's interesting. Why am I thinking that? And what am I really concerned about? Because if I do that, then am I just pushing off my success? And if that's the case, why am I so worried about that? And what would that mean for me? You know, like you can take it down further so you can look at it and say, what does that really mean to me? And am I really afraid of moving forward? And what does that look like? And when you can start to do that, and you can start to really take it back kind of in these layers, then you can say, you can look at it more objectively. And you can kind of almost like it's a tangible item, like your thought is almost, you know, sitting here physically in your hand, and you can kind of look at it and go, wow, okay, I see you thought. You know, I always talk to it. Sometimes I'll look at things and I'll go, that's interesting. Why did I have that thought? Oh my gosh, I can so remember a time when blah, 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 blah happened. And wow, that was okay. That was hurtful, but I can, if I only knew now, right? Sometimes we can look back, hindsight's 2020, and go, well, if I knew now what if I knew then what I know now, man, I would have handled that differently. Okay, well, maybe you didn't, but you can look at it and say, well, does this thought still serve me? And a lot of times I'll feel like I'm holding it in my hand and I'll say, does that thought serve me? Like looking for somebody else to validate what I've written or what I've put out there. And, you know, does that help? Or if somebody has criticized me, like if I look at it and I think, well, I can remember a time when my professor criticized me for something that I wrote that I thought was so great. And okay, but maybe the reality maybe I was having a bad day. In all
Yes.
actuality, it could have been something like that, but I have a different perspective. So if I can look back now and say, interesting, it could have been one of many different things that could have been happening. So if it's no longer serving me, then I'm going to choose to release it and move forward now. Because otherwise, if I keep hanging on to it, holy cow, that's like an anchor around us. And that, what's that going to do?
Yeah.
Nothing in the long run.
No. And so, you mentioned earlier in your intro that you'd turned one idea into 3 income streams, and you've also been, what I'd call a bit of a serial entrepreneur. You've had multiple businesses over the years and still got multiple businesses. So would you say that is that how you've overcome a fear of success in your life? Being able to take those thoughts and sort of examine them and discard them or distance yourself from them? Or is there something else that you think has contributed to you being able to take so much action towards what you would like?
That's a great question. I think that it's been a combination of things. It's because it's incremental. Success is incremental. And, you reach one level. It's like you might want to start out and say, oh my gosh, like early on, it was, okay, I want $100,000 business, or maybe I want more because you achieve that and then you want something else, right? So it's incremental. And every time you move forward, you reach something else and you say, oh, when did that happen in my life? And you can take a look at it and say, that's interesting. But I think a big part of it, number one, is having a vision. And I think a big why that's tied to that. So when I first started, years ago, I was in sales, and I went into sales only because I knew that I just was not ever going to be somebody that could go to I never could understand how people went to work 9 to 5, 9 to 6 or whatever, 5 days a week. I had a really hard time with that, but that was because my dad had his own business and he did 90% of his business on the golf course. And so I grew up seeing that, and my mom owned an antique shop. And so because I saw that, I think to me, it was like, oh, when I did have a job in college, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to live through this, right? You see it? So it's like you find a way out. And for me, it was like I had to. So there was a driving force within me that thought, I can't do this. I got to find something. And I went into sales, outside sales, because I had outside sales. I didn't have to be beholden to somebody all the time. I had very high quotas, but I could, in a sense, write my own paycheck up to a certain level. And then they kind of cap things. But, so it was that vision. And I think vision is really important. But again, we can be here and have a vision here, but it's very easy to get off track if we don't have a strong enough why. And for me, my why became stronger as I started my production company and the online magazine stuff, because I was divorced and I had 4 kids that I was raising, and I had to provide for them. We had lost quite a bit, and I now had to go, oh gosh, what am I going to do here? So it became a very real issue for me. And it was like, how am I going to take care of them? This was my major why, but still be present to them. And I was out doing some outside sales for a little bit while I figured out, how am I going to start building this thing? And then I created the online magazine. But that was truly based on having a vision for my life and for my children's life. And that why was, I wanted to be home and present for them and still be able to provide for them. So that, again, it's kind of incremental. But at the same time, when I'd reach a certain level, I would hit like this ceiling, and I'd think, oh my gosh, how do I get that? Why is it that I can hit like this $200,000 mark, but why am I not getting past that? What's the deal? And then I realized that my parents had done, when they finally got their dream home with an ocean view and all that stuff. And yet that's when all sorts of things started crumbling. Like they had major communication issues. They went through divorce. Anyway, everything kind of got lost. And so, but in my head, I linked it to the money, and it had nothing to do with the money. So I had to go back and say, well, wait a minute, where am I seeing this? And why is that number significant? And this is what I mean about the awareness, because what happened is I started avoiding certain things. I was like, oh, I just don't want to get that done. I don't want to make that phone call. And yet I liked what I was doing, but I'm like, why am I avoiding this? What's really going on? And that was part of the fear of success. And then I started thinking, okay, what's the thing here? And then when you become aware, you look at it and you go, why is that number significant? Why do I keep reaching a certain level and then hard to break through, right? And a big part of that was going back and saying, oh, I could see when they hit a certain level in their businesses and things started to crumble. but it had to do with other things that were obviously going on, and then their own problems within their, their own relationship and lack of communication, all that, nothing to do with the money. But because at that time, I was like in my 14-year-old, 15-year-old self, I was thinking, oh, it has to do with, you have a different perspective. That's what I mean by going back and looking at it. And you can say, oh, wait a minute. And then you look at it and you say, okay, does that serve me anymore? Is that really the truth? And does that belief serve me anymore? And then I can say, you know what? That doesn't serve me anymore. It's time to put on your big girl pants and move forward, because that's no longer the truth. And it's not the person that I have to believe. You don't have to go back and go through years of therapy. You can very quickly create a new belief, or a new, you're creating a new neural pathway, really. Yeah. And you can create that new pathway the more that you stay on it and you stay connected to your vision. And you stay, you come from this perspective of, okay, that's not that person that I choose to be, or the belief I choose to be this person who has the great relationship, who has the family that's very close, who, and so you start to develop all that around you, of course, with the emotion, you start to get connected to the emotional side of it.
Yes, I can see as well, like, you think, what was our experience of a successful business owner, or, what it takes to be that. And you look back and, gosh, my experience and what I saw when I was young was they worked all the time. Yes, they had a team, but it was hard and it didn't look fun, and they were away from their families. And so, like, there's all those connections that you made to, well, that's what it means once if you're going to build a business that's big and it's going to be successful, then that's what your reality will be like. Well, is that really true? Like you're saying, like, that's just one view of it. And can we make a new view? Like, can we challenge those thoughts? But I guess it's finding what we are thinking. Why do we not want to get new clients? You're telling me you want new clients, but then you're not doing the actions to go and get them. So what is it going to mean for you when they come in? It doesn't mean that you're thinking, well, if I have more clients, then I'm not going to have the time that I want with my family. And why are we thinking that? And is that really true? Or is there something that we can do to change how you operate or how you serve them? Or
that's a good point, because that goes to boundaries. That goes to, actually, it goes to speaking to two things. One, are you really connected to your vision? Because you have to get clear on that first. A lot of times most people become entrepreneurs because they are looking for two things. They're looking for freedom. Well, they're looking for really freedom, number one. And that freedom is financial freedom, the ability to, in a sense, write your own paycheck. The second thing is that freedom in their schedule, being able to get up when they want to. I mean, if you have kids, it's going to be different, obviously, but basically to have your own schedule, to set your own schedule, right? And that's why they come into it. But what happens is that they start to chase the money, or they look around at what other people are doing and they think, oh, this is where we get derailed and such. So that's why it's so important to start first with and you may not know, people may not know what their business looks like. So I've seen this too, where people say, I want a lot of clients, but then they're like, oh gosh, I really don't. And they hold back. Well, partly because that may not really be the vision that they want for their business. And so if you don't want that for your business, then you have to go back to your vision and say, what do you want your life to look like? Forget the business, because your business will support your life vision, but you have to start with them. What do you want your life to look like? Because when you get clear on what do I want my life to look like? What do I want to feel like? And again, it goes into the emotion of it. And then when you get connected to the emotion of it, then you can say, okay, now I'm getting somewhere. Because that hustle mentality, I mean, I had that too. My family did say, hey, the early bird gets the worm, get up early, go, get this done, clean, do your chores, all that kind of thing. The hustle mentality will work. You will become successful if you are hustling, and you're always out there and, making all the sales calls and stuff, but there will definitely be a price to pay. Absolutely. Yeah. You will have to give up something. Your health, your family, something will suffer. And because we're not one-dimensional beings, we're not meant to be. And so you have to find that alignment, and that alignment comes first by vision. And the why is part of that vision. Why is that so important to you? For me, being able to own several different, my big thing now is getting different income properties, and at least 4 different income properties, because that's going into my family trust, because I have 4 kids. So it's like, okay, that's a big why for me. But again, it's incremental. You reach something and you go for something else, and you reach something, you go for something else. the same thing we do with our clients, right? Creating like a journey for them. It's the same thing we do in our own lives, but it really is understanding, I think, truly what, like you said earlier, what your zone of genius is. And it's a great way of putting it, because when you can tap into what your zone of genius is, like, we all have a purpose for being here. So what's that purpose? What really lights you up? What makes your heart sing? Because if you can look at that and go, oh my gosh, this is what I could get so lost in doing for hours on end, then you know you're in your zone of genius. Then you're aligned with it. And it doesn't mean that, you aren't going to have these things that you have to do or have to get done. But the more time you can spend in that area that you are just feeling full, the more that you are stepping into and connecting to your own innate genius and that intuitive side of you. And it's really, let's face it, it's the intuitive side that's running the show, or that needs to be running the show. We try so often to think of things consciously and approach things with our logical mind on how am I going to figure out my purpose? How am I going to figure out what I'm supposed to do? And you can't approach it that way. You have to approach it you have to get into, laugh about this, because this is why I think the adult coloring books became so popular. Because it's a game, and it gets you outside of your left side of brain, your logical mind, and into your right side. And when you can get in touch with that and create a game, like you play a game with it, you can get in touch more with that intuition, which then is your zone of genius, which is your vision, and all of that kind of flows from that. And it can be as simple as, just playing around with it and saying, what would it be like if I were to do this? What would it be like if it, just asking yourself some fun questions and playing around with it and thinking, what would it be like if what would it be like if I went dancing every day of the week? How would that work? And could I have a business around that? You just play with it.
Yes. Yeah, that's so true. And what you were saying about having that driving purpose, you can really see that when the drive for what it is you want to achieve is stronger than the fear of success, you can kind of really overcome that fear of success, because you focus instead on, well, this is what I'm driving for, this is what I want to achieve and why. Then that force becomes stronger within you, doesn't it? Like, instead of holding you back and procrastinating. Do you think that there are
forward? It becomes the thing that pulls you forward.
Pulls you forward, yeah. And it's a deeper level and a higher level, I think, where you need to get to, because you might find your zone of genius, but then you're probably still at the point where you're going, well, okay, how do I sell it? How do I get clients? That's still your surface level. And it's like aligning that zone of genius, then, well, how does this look as my ideal business? And like you said, what do you want your life to look like? Because if you're just staying at the level of, well, this is my zone of genius, now I'm going to sell it. This is where I find a lot of people start their business and I've created a service, now I'm selling it, and they're doing that. And then they're like, well, why aren't I achieving my goals? It's like, because we haven't started with that end vision, and you're not aligning your service offering to get you to the end vision. So of course there's a disconnect there, because you're just focused on the surface level of selling a service and getting the clients. And that's fine. You can get a certain way doing that, but you're not going to reach that ultimate life that you want and that you've got in the back of your mind, because you haven't then made that connection or alignment to your offering, which
Exactly.
So good.
Exactly. Because you're in the rut, you're in the mundane tasks that you're doing, and you're not coming from the place of, oh, if I'm already here, what would that feel like? What would my life feel like? And then how do I actually start to program things to get to that point? The how will always be made clear. It's always going to be made clear, because our intuitive side knows, but if we don't step out with trust and in faith is always rewarded. Action's always rewarded, because with every little bit of action, we gain that clarity. And so if you keep asking the question, I don't know how to do this, how do I get there? Or I'm so unclear. Oh, if I could just get clear. If I just had more clarity around that, I know what to do. If I just had the how, if I had a plan in front of me, I know what to do. The plan will be revealed when you take a baby step forward. And that baby step can be as simple as sending an email. It could be as simple as just even taking the time to be connected to the vision and getting into the emotion of it. Because when you get into the emotion of it, then you can really start to feel it. And then you can start to affect it yourself at the cellular level. And all change happens at a cellular level. It doesn't happen at the conscious level. It happens at the cellular level. And then all of a sudden, that's when you start to find yourself in flow. Synchronicity takes over. It's like all of a sudden you have that chance meeting with somebody. You get the referral. You're standing in line at the bank or at the post office and somebody introduces you to somebody, or you notice something on the wall and you're like, oh, light bulb moment, right? Because so many people can already be there, but we don't see them because we're like, here, how do I get there? And it's like, I'm trying to tell you right here, but we don't pay attention to it.
I love that. That's so powerful. It's like, let's get out of the to-do list, consciously get out of it. Like if you're stuck in the to-do list every day, then you're, like you said, you're at that task level, and that's kind of where you're going to stay. And to get the shifts that you want, it's like getting out of that. Get out of the day-to-day tasks for a moment and set your brain up into connecting to your purpose. Why are you doing this? What is it that you're trying to achieve? Is what you're doing right now helping you get there? I love that. So if that would be maybe one of the mistakes that entrepreneurs are making that are kind of delaying their success, do you think that there are any other kind of key mistakes that you see people doing, or what they're stuck in, how they're in their own way that's preventing them from achieving their success faster?
Yeah, I do, actually. I think a lot of times people play very small. I think we hold ourselves back by playing small, by asking for too little. Because, and that I think is probably one of the most common things, is that we don't trust our own selves enough or believe in our value enough to ask for more. And by more, I'm not just meaning, more as far as dollar amount, or, money coming in. Yes, that I think is, part of it. But I also think that when you can start to truly trust yourself and lean into what it is that you truly want to do, and that comes again from really understanding yourself, understanding what lights you up. When you can truly start to lean into that more, then you start to open yourself up to receive bigger gifts from the universe itself. And with that comes more opportunities. And with those opportunities, again, it starts to pull us forward. And within those opportunities, we start to open ourselves up to a bigger role, basically, for ourselves. And I think that it's so common to just kind of go to this huge ocean with this little tiny, teacup, when in reality, everything in this world is meant for expansion. Like spirit, universe, God, energy, flow, whatever you want to call it. Alan Watts says you can't get wet by the word water. So it doesn't, I believe in a universal energy. I was raised Christian, so I call my energy God. But whatever spirit you want to believe in, there is an energetic force that is alive in this universe. They're 100%. We know that. Science tells us that. So if we know that energetic force is alive in this universe, and we've seen an abundant universe, if you can take a look and you can see a weed or a flower grow up through a crack in pavement, we've all seen that. If it can do that, and we can see forests regenerate themselves, now it might take time, I get that, but it happens. The tide goes in and out constantly, right? We know that it happens. There's an ebb and flow to life. There always is. So if we have that, why do we settle for so little? Why are we constantly settling for so little? Again, our souls are meant for expansion. That's the purpose. Our souls are meant for growth. So why are we sitting there going, I don't know. Oh, I don't want to ask for too much, because that's a conditioned thing. It's a conditioned way of being. And we have been conditioned as human beings to kind of just don't ask for too much, don't say too much, don't talk too loudly, don't, all these little things, right, that so many of us have heard over the years. Whether it be family, whether it be teachers, whether it be just, friends, it doesn't matter. We've all picked it up. And so you kind of go, okay, well, wait a minute. It doesn't really have to be that way. Again, we have that choice. Are we willing to kind of release those shackles and say, wait a minute, I have the ability to step into something bigger. That only comes from trust. And again, the more that you lean into that, and you say, it's like driving through fog. It's kind of like, when you drive through fog, you go a little bit and then more becomes clear and then more becomes clear. Anytime you take a baby step forward, the path starts to become clear for you. And eventually you start to go, wow, I really can ask for more. There is more that I can be doing, because the more that you are able to do it and show up for yourself, think about how many other people that you start. It's a ripple effect. It just starts to ripple out to others. And all these other people go, wow, if it's working for her, holy cow, look how many more people now. I've started online businesses in just the past few years, because they start to see, wow, that person's doing it. That person's starting to do it. There is something here, But again, there's a flip side to that. people don't stay consistent with it. They give up far too easily because they
Yes.
hold themselves back and, oh my gosh, it's not happening fast enough. Victim mentality, not happening fast enough, not happening fast. I didn't know it was going to work. It's not going to work. It takes too long. No, you got to be consistent, and you got to have that belief and trust in the process and take little steps forward, because with each little step forward, pretty soon, man, that you're going to have that giant awakening.
Yeah.
That's the shift. That's the shift. But again, the shift always happens at a cellular level. And that's why we have to kind of get connected to the emotion of everything, emotion of our vision, and put ourselves in there and feel it. Otherwise, it's very easy to try and approach it from the logical mind, and that will derail us so fast.
Yes. And I can see that this is another place where we could get tripped up with worrying about what other people are thinking. So like, can I really put that price on it? Or, can I really ask for that much? Well, why are you even asking that question? That clearly you're thinking about what the other person is thinking. And have they even said that to you? Have you asked for it and got a no? Or are you just projecting something internal, again, externally? So it's like, I can just see so much synchronicity in what we're talking about here, where, maybe it's like, can you trust yourself? What about just trusting your own judgment, trusting what's coming internally, and stopping trying to project what's happening externally or what you think other people are going to think, because that's all coming from inside. So maybe we just need to turn the mirror on ourselves, right?
It's turning the mirror on ourselves and leaning into that, trusting that inner voice, leaning into that intuition. I think it's so easy for us to give up on ourselves and look outside and try and find the answers outside of ourselves, when the reality is that the answers are within ourselves. And when we are talking about pricing and trying to understand, okay, what should I put on this? And that's a common thing for people to worry about. How do I price this? And what are people going to think? And what is the marketplace held? And what everybody's got this kind of number, and everybody's using a 9-7 or a 7 at the end. Why is that? I've heard people say, well, I don't do that anymore because I just wanted to change things. Okay, whatever. It's what works for you. But in pricing, the numbers don't really matter, because when you can get outside of that, thinking of the numbers, again, that's a conscious thought, conscious way of approaching it, a logical mind way of approaching it. And I understand that because we have, obviously, we work in that. We have a right brain, left brain. But at the same time, if you can lean into more about what is it that people really want, and how am I best able to provide what they want? Because people will pay to get a desired result. So if you lean into what's the desired result they want, and am I able to help them get there? And if I can help them get there, they're willing to pay for that. I mean, if you want, I'm shopping for a mother of the bride dress because my daughter's getting married soon. And so I look around at different dresses, and there are obviously certain stores that I'm going to go. And I don't really care. At this point, I'm like, I just want the dress. I want it to look good. Why? Because what's my desired result? So for me, do I have a budget that's yes, but will I stretch that a little bit? I'll stretch it a little bit if it's the right dress for me. So it's the same thing. People will pay for whatever the desired result is. So you have to get outside of that thinking, because the moment we start to think, oh my gosh, I don't know if somebody will pay for this, or I don't, we've already shut it. We've shut it down. We've already put the limitations on it. So that's why you have to go, wait a minute, and look at it. Awareness, look at it and say, I'm putting limitations on this. I got to step out of that. Let me go back into connect to the desired result they want, bring in the emotion to it. And then it's a game changer.
Amazing. That's incredible. Yeah, so true. I think you've shared so much. My brain, I've learned a lot in listening to you today, and I'm sure that our listeners are going to go back and re-listen to this episode again. If they'd like to connect with you and learn more about what you do, what's the best place for them to do that? What have you got coming up?
I do have a masterclass coming up, and I think we'll put the link in here, but I do have a masterclass coming up, and I talk a lot about understanding your purpose and zone of genius, and then really leaning into your value, knowing what your value is, understanding that value, so you do get out of your own way and you can start to move forward to what you truly want. So that's a masterclass I have coming up, and beyond that, they can always reach out to me via any of my social media channels. Everything is Kim Kelley Thompson, and Kelley is with 2 E's, Kelley. So my website's the same, kimkellythompson.com.
Amazing. I will link all of that up in the show notes. That might masterclass sounds incredible. I think what a great place to start, or even no matter where you're at in your business, if you're stalled, getting clear on your value, your vision, how you're linking that together, so powerful. And like you've been talking about today, just what that opens up for you, because you can suddenly get out of your own way and actually start taking the right action. So I'll link that up in the show notes as well. You can find Kim and get into that masterclass. So thank you for sharing that with us, Kim. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Great. I love this conversation. I love this conversation. I know you know so much about this how we trip ourselves up in the business world and just trying to go forward with things. It's silly really, but there's a way through it.
There is. Yeah. And I think that it's, like you've been saying, just how do you catch those thoughts and actually look at and see them and then challenge them? How do we become aware of what it is that's going on and what we're holding on to from our past selves? There's so much in that, we've just touched on so lightly today, but thank you for sharing, because I think all of this, we're all steps in the right direction. So thank you for listening in. Thank you for staying with us to the end of this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And thank you, Kim. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jess. I appreciate it. It was great.
Do you know what the number one challenge reported by the women joining my Facebook community, My Tribe, said that they were struggling with their marketing in 2021, and in fact even in 2020 as well? And that was exactly how they should reach their ideal client. How do they even get in front of them in order to build their audience in the first place? That was it. And it wasn't a pick and mix. I didn't give them that answer. It was a free text question. So they could write in there anything they wanted at all. And the number of times that I saw somebody say, how to create awareness, how to get in front of my ideal client and build my audience. So many people just challenged by it. And why is that when there's such an abundance of ways that we can get in front of the ideal client? And I think it's probably that is exactly it. It's so overwhelming, isn't it? What should you do? What should you choose? What are the best ways? Whatever it is that you're doing right now might not be working. And I think it's a great time to sit back, reflect, and figure out what's the right way for you to do it. What are the ways that you're going to reach your prospective clients in 2022? So if that sounds like you, if that might have been what you wrote down in the questions on what is your biggest challenge with your marketing currently, then you're going to absolutely love the new freebie that I've just put together for you. It's called 12 Brilliant Ways to Reach Your Ideal Client. And in it, I share with you the 12 top ways that you could use in your marketing plan this year to reach a bigger, broader audience in order to attract those ideal clients in to your inner circle, into your, really well-defined audience and become real leads for you. So if you'd like to get your hands on this brand new freebie, then all you need to do is go to jessicaosborne.com/12 ways. So it's 12 ways. Very easy. You can download it there, and this is a little bit of great resource for your planning, for the planning of the new year. See what you're going to change up. What is it that you maybe haven't been doing that you could be doing? And what are those things that you've been doing and they're not very effective, and maybe you're going to drop them out of your plan this year? So please head over, grab the freebie. If you want the link, that it's in the show notes, and let's get you moving on up, having more success with your marketing in 2022.